Hello. Something's coming to your phone. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon enough. It's unlikely the government will announce it with a fanfare, and some people might not even notice the update when it happens. But behind the scenes, and you may have heard about this already, Starmer is demanding that tech companies build something new into every smartphone in the UK, something that could quietly change the way your device works and the way your digital life is monitored. And unless we understand what's being proposed now, before it arrives, we may not get another chance to ask the right questions. Welcome to Grey Matters. Hello, and welcome to Grey Matters, the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters and has relevance, and which looks at issues that matter to the older generation. And this matters to all generations. Now, last October, we talked about digital ID by stealth, how certain policies were being introduced indirectly through the back door without ever using the phrase digital ID. Take a look at this. Well, what the government has done and is doing seems fairly benign at first glance, but it appears that every new bill and act has tendrils that reach out to digital ID. They're putting in place the backbone of the digital ID scheme, and most of us are blind to it. And a lot of this surreptitious digital ID is encompassed by the Govt.uk's one login system. Now, according to Claire, there is actually a backdoor to digital ID through new legislation, such as the Online Safety Act that came into force recently, that requires you to upload your biometric data to access certain websites and platforms. Online, the main culprits and the keys to the backdoor are firstly the government's one login system, currently for pensions and services, but which from 2027 will be mandatory to access all government services. Then there's the NHS app for health and data. People are opting into them for convenience without realising the future implications. Little by little, we're voluntarily giving up our personal data to the government through convenient apps and websites. It's really disturbing because in its seemingly benign individual strands, it's actually getting you used to this digital intrusion. Well, today we're seeing the next phase of that. We're seeing the next step in the same pattern, and it's arriving under the banner of child protection. Now, let's be absolutely clear, protecting children from harm online is essential. Nobody can dispute that. The internet and social media in particular can be a dangerous, exploitative and violent place for young people. But the method being proposed and the technology required to enforce it goes far beyond child safety. It potentially reaches into the private lives of every adult in the country. So what is the government actually asking for? Well, Starmer has told Apple, Google and other tech companies that they must make it impossible for children to take, send or receive nude images, and to do this they must build or activate on-device nudity detection systems, and they must do it within 3 months or face legislation. Now, taken at face value, this would appear to be a great step forward in child protection, but the fact is, for adults, it's something far more insidious. This demand by Starmer is blowing up on the internet, and if you believe everything you read, or everything you see or hear, you'll probably think this is a done deal. But what Starmer has done is to issue a political directive. He's not passed a law. Starmer is using a tactic called legislation by ultimatum. So the government announces a policy as if it's inevitable. They threaten companies with fines or criminal liability if they don't comply. They rely on companies to comply without a fight, and that all avoids public debate or scrutiny. It creates the impression of inevitability even though nothing is legally binding yet. Now, normally major changes to digital rights go through a very clear process. A white paper, public consultation, draft bill and so on until it comes to parliamentary vote. None of that has happened here and probably won't. What the government is doing means that there's no public consultation, and this is why civil liberty groups are alarmed, because it bypasses the usual democratic safeguards. So what's this non-nudity safeguard going to consist of? Well, to block an image, the phone must first detect a nude image, and to detect a nude image, the phone must scan every photo the child takes, receives or downloads. There's no other way to do it. It's not speculation, it's not my opinion, it's simply how the technology will work. And if your phone knows what's in a photo, it's analysed the photo. The government says this scanning is only for children's devices, but that's not actually how the system's going to work. There's no way to determine what devices are being used or shared by children. So all phones will have to have the scanning system built in, and the scanning will be on by default. Adults will be able to have it turned off, but only after proving their age through a verification process. Does this sound familiar? A face scan or a government issued document such as a driving licence or passport? Yeah. In other words, digital ID for everyone without the usual democratic process. The scanning will be universal, but the ability to disable it will be restricted. And that raises a serious question. Who controls the off switch? Because it isn't going to be you. It'll be the platform or the manufacturer or the government. And once the system exists, it could be expanded with a simple software update. So what's going to get scanned? If the phone is looking for nudity, it must scan your private photos, your holiday pics, your medical images, your WhatsApp photos, your screenshots, your downloads, camera roll, potentially your cloud backups. It cannot know which photos contain nudity without analysing all of them. And yes, false positives are inevitable. Beach photographs, topless photographs on the beach, underwear photographs, medical conditions, breastfeeding, all these things. And these systems already misfire in the real world. That's why Apple abandoned its CSAM scanning system, which is designed to detect abuse images. And importantly, when it comes to your privacy, your phone won't know if you're allowed to have adult content without your age verification. In other words, digital ID. Now there was, and still is, a huge backlash against age verification on adult sites, which is usually bypassed by using a VPN. But a VPN won't help you in this case, where the government-approved spyware is built into your phone. To turn off the scanning, adults must prove their age. And to access social media, under another of Starmer's proposed new rules, adults must prove their age. Different policies, same mechanism. A digital ID check. Not called digital ID, of course, not presented as digital ID, but functioning exactly like one. A requirement for you to verify who you are in order to use basic digital services. And you know, for me, there's also the issue of trust. Even if you believe the current government has good intentions, technology doesn't care about intentions. Once the infrastructure exists, it can be expanded. It can be repurposed or pointed at new categories of content, such as your emails. And of course, even if disabled, it could be reactivated and you'd have no way of knowing. Could you trust whether the scanning is truly off? Could you trust this or future governments not to scan your data or log or flag your emails? The fact is, you won't be able to audit it or inspect it or verify it. You'll be expected just to trust a system you cannot see. And trust right now is in very short supply. Now, all this matters. I'm not being alarmist, I'm being a realist. It isn't about whether adults should or shouldn't take, download, store or share certain photographs. That's not the point. The point is that your phone is the most private device you own. It contains your life, your memories, your relationships, your health, your identity. And the moment we accept that it's normal for a phone to scan everything we create, we normalise a level of intrusion that would have been unthinkable of 10 years ago. Not only because of what it does today, but because of what it enables for tomorrow. Technology is a one-way street. Once it's built, it doesn't get unbuilt. If we allow device-level scanning to become standard, And if we accept digital identity checks as the price of turning it off, we're laying the foundations for a future where access to the internet requires identity checks, where private content is analysed by default, and where access to social media requires identity. Like I said, we know Starmer's already flagged that. Once built, that infrastructure makes anything possible, and once it's possible, it becomes tempting for governments, for regulators, for companies, for future administrations. And that's why this matters now, before the system is built, not after. If Starmer was here, he'd be challenging us with, oh, don't you want to protect your children or grandchildren? Dreadful impression. Yes, of course we do. But the real question should be, what are we building in the process? Who will control it? And what else could it be used for in the future? These aren't small questions. They deserve public debate. They deserve transparency and scrutiny, not sneaking it in through ultimatums and software updates. Once this technology is in every phone, it won't just be protecting children, it'll be shaping the digital rights of every adult in the country. If those goes through, well, I can see a huge black market looming in mobile phones. People will be making a fortune selling old phones without the scanning technology, or even phones that have been hacked to disable it in some way. If you agree this is a problem, then please do comment and share this video, and maybe start writing some letters. Let the government know your feelings on the matter. This is important, and I could feel it looming. I hate the idea of things I do being scrutinised by a government. Don't know about you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you subscribe, then hit the bell. You'll be notified of our future content. And don't forget, you can hype the video from any mobile device for the first 7 days after publication. And as mentioned a couple of times, there'll be an exciting announcement coming very soon. Yeah, hopefully the next video. So that's it for the moment. Thanks for joining us again. Until the next time here on Grey Matters, thanks for joining us, and it's bye for now.